There's a lot of what I call do something-isms. Like, okay, someone's coming to see me, I must do something to fix this person. If someone's got plantar heel pain, they've had it for 12 months, they're coming to see you and they're paying. There's a lot of input on us as health professionals, a lot of impetus for us to fix them, and part of my education to my clients is that I'm not going to fix you. Natural history has this. Your body is healing this. We're just trying to create an environment that makes that a bit more readily available to your body to heal this. So I'm going to try and help you along that path. Whereas I think a lot of traditional health practitioners are still trying to be the one that fixes it. And you see it. People will come in and say, I want you to fix me. I straight away say, I'm not going to be fixing you. Your body's got this in hand. I'm just going to be guiding you.
Welcome to the Restore to Explore podcast from the Foot Collective. We're on a mission to empower humans to restore their natural health and function from the ground up, so we can all explore movement and life with freedom and confidence.
All right, Andy.
Hi.
Fancy seeing you here. This is a nice little park podcast. We're doing a few of these outdoor ones lately. It's a good vibe. And we're obviously here in Melbourne.
Been playing a bit.
Had a bit of play. And now time to get to work.
It's hardly work.
Yeah.
Oh, it's pretty good work.
It's the best kind of work.
Yeah.
So we were just exploring a bit before that it would be great to go through your process as a podiatrist. We've obviously talked through your story on a previous podcast. So maybe just to focus a bit deeper on how you approach someone with foot pain or any kind of pain that they come to see you with. Let's just start where you start, and we can ask questions as we go.
So my initial consultations are for an hour. Is this the type of detail you want?
Yeah.
From the outset, they walk in the door.
Well, before they walk in the door, something happens. They reach out via email, phone, whatever. But we have like a triage thing going on where either I speak to them or Melissa, my wife, who's my admin at the moment, to find out where they're at. Pretty much, because I think that's for me more than anything else, because I don't like surprises, and I want to know that I'm going to be able to help someone or not. And if they're just someone local and they want a new pair of orthotics, it's going to, it just sets me up for a different conversation than if it's someone that's been trying to go into barefoot shoes for the last 4 years and having all these issues. So I just like to have some readiness in my mind as to where we're going to be going, and so that's just a few notes from admin saying, runner, X, Y, Z happening, where they're coming from, because sometimes they travel a long way, just so I know what the expectation is, because then I don't want to use the word perform, but I'm going to be better if I am prepared for someone.
You'll be able to adjust to the person a bit easier, have a bit of mental preparation.
Yeah, definitely. And I am, next week someone's coming down from Wodonga, which is I think on the train, so it's probably like a 3-hour train trip, and they've off their own bat sent me a rundown of what's going on in their feet for the last 10 years, probably, or maybe even back further. I love that. I want to know all the information. So that's great. In that case,
how do you find, clients take that? Because that's, again, it's a fair bit of effort they're having to put in.
Yeah, so most wouldn't have done that page-long thing about that. Most are just talking to Melissa or I about where they're at, and they're like, wow. Someone gives a shit straight away. They care, and someone is caring immediately about my issue. Not just booking in. This is not just an admin person. This is someone going, Andy wants to know about you. And so it sets it off from a really good start, I think. It starts that relationship before I've even met them. So that's, I think, critical for me, but I think it's a really helpful thing for the client as well. If it's a Zoom or an online one, then I get them sending me their whole history and doing some videos and stuff like that as well. Because again, I want to be prepared. I want to make the most of our time together. But still will only be for an hour. But I'm going to have to do a bit more in-depth exercises. It's a bit more fiddly over online. So I want to know that background first.
So you get more background online so that it's less cumbersome online.
Yeah, online. And also it's harder to help someone online. So I want to make sure I am going to be able to. And so I'm going, okay, is this, maybe it's not, I'm not the right person for you.
Right.
Because, you're not going to solve everyone's problems, and making sure they're a good fit from the start is what you could deem to be a good fit from the start is important, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So then they come in, they've been sent a message the day before asking to bring all their shoes. And so that's pretty important because I need to see what the foot's going to be in, So they come in and we just get chatting, really. I might just ask where they've come from. Like I find a common ground usually. It might be like I want to know how they were referred. I might already know, but I'm going to ask that because then I understand a bit more about their expectations. Because I'll often know the person that sent them, whether it be a health practitioner or a friend or a family member, or it could just be the local GP who doesn't know anything about what I do specifically, and then that's going to set the framework for how I'm going to be helping this person, like where we're going to pick up for them and get to on that day. And at some point, maybe in that first 5 minutes, I'll be asking them about their foot pain or why they're there to see me. But sometimes it could be like, I might have my dogs at work and we talk about dogs for the first 10 minutes before we even start talking about their feet, just to find a common ground. And definitely that first 15 minutes is just finding that history and that common ground, and then delving into their foot pain, how it's affecting them, what they like to do, what their work situation's like, what their family situation's like, just like delving into how their foot pain affects all these different things without even looking at their feet at the stage. They may not even have their shoes off. But if they're saying, if I'm not sure where their pain is, I might have them have their shoes off and they can point to it or something like that. And already I've maybe just started putting some education out there about why they have pain, or just explaining a few little things along the way if it fits to explain things. And so like 15 minutes is gone, we've really got to know someone and talked to some extent and talked about their pain, how it's affecting their life, what they like to do. And then I go into an assessment. And traditionally podiatry has watched someone walk and tried to find what's wrong with them. When I'm watching someone walk these days, I'm trying to see that they're functioning as a human walking. And you know what? Nearly everyone can. And no one is the same, and no one is perfect. And what is the perfect anyway? What's the ideal or what's the normal? There is not an ideal or normal, even though as podiatrists we're taught this textbook foot that lands in this place and pronates into the ground, loads, and then pushes off with supination. Like, as long as those things are mainly happening, then I'm pretty happy. I might be getting a sense for the way someone moves in terms of they might be more mobile or more stiff, and that might be relating to their pain. So I'm starting to build this little picture up in my head, but trying not to jump too far ahead of myself and label what the issue is, but just getting a picture for how they are moving without going, how am I going to fix this? What am I going to, like traditional podiatry sees that foot pronate and goes, I need to do something about that. We need to slow it down. We need to control it. And so I'm just trying to make it a positive thing, and I'm explaining that as we go. So I'm watching someone walk and saying, what I'm watching for is your foot pronating and your foot supinating. I want to see those things. I want to see how well they're doing those things, and we want to be ticking that box. And if there's a big red flag, then that might be something we work on. Like if the foot is readily pronating and finding it hard to supinate, to push off, like it looks like it's not an efficient movement, then that might be a red flag that we're going to be working on. And how might that correlate to why they have pain? And so I'm just talking about this the whole time. I'm not like keeping secrets. I'm just telling them I'm just telling you what I'm seeing and thinking here. So that goes on. And then, I talk then about how the foot moves as a human, and how when it's bare, it's moving this way. And then maybe I'll put in a bit about shoes there, having an effect on the way they might be moving. And then we unpack gait in more detail. So I watch them balance, because in walking and especially running, there's a balance phase. And so I want to see them balance, because if that's inefficient, then with every step, there's an inefficiency happening, and this could be leading to an overuse thing or pain. So I'm watching them balance, explaining what I'm looking for, explaining why the way they're moving, but not giving them any cues to do it better yet, because it might not be the big red flag that I'm going to be working on. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, what 3 or 4 things this person going to get bang for their buck best for their pain or function, depending on what they're coming to see me for. Then I'm watching them do a calf raise, because this mimics toeing off, pushing off in the gait. And so I watch them do a double leg calf raise, single leg calf raise to capacity, like how many they can do. I'm looking at their technique, how well they do this movement, what other compensations they're using to do this movement. And then I'm watching them do a single leg squat. Sometimes they have to hold on to see how well their body organizes itself when the foot's landing on the ground, like how controlled is that movement. and so this is like unpacking those phases of gait and seeing and building up a picture of where we can add things that might make that more of an efficient movement. Obviously, if they're a runner, I might watch them run, or if they're a, depending on what sport, I might look at more sport-specific things. But from that basic assessment of walking and then unpacking those walking things, I'll lead my my further assessment, and that will be looking into their shoe wear, like where their shoes are wearing out, because that will coincide often with what I'm seeing in their calf raise or where their landing mechanics. Then I might see that they've got maybe an earlier heel lift and they might have tight ankles, so I might be doing a knee to wall test. So that basic starter will lead me into other paths, and depending on whether it's going to be relational to their pain or not. And then then the other thing that I nearly always do will be see how well their brain is connected to their feet. So watching them move their toes, and then how well they move when I load their toes using my fingers as a resistance. And if they can't load their toes, how well I can get those muscles within the foot to fire with other activities, like maybe balance stuff or balancing on a space, to see if I can get those muscles to fire up. And so just building this picture and explaining all the while why I'm doing it and how that might relate to their pain or function, whatever they're coming to see me. And obviously footwear's in there as well, and explaining how that might be relating to each of these phases, whether it be the cushioning might be not great for your balance because it's going to create more instability, or push your big toe sideways, and then if your big toe sideways, it's going to be very hard to balance well, these types of things. So from that, I come up with education all the way through. Education would be like, if I'm writing my client notes, number one, education for everyone. Like, it's just explaining to them what's going on. And from that, I am going into a treatment or a intervention, whether that's going to hopefully have a big effect quickly. And that might be, when I say quickly, I'm talking like 1 week to 6 months, depending on the issue. But where are they going to get bang for their buck with their movement? And so if they haven't been able to do an efficient calf raise technically, like their technique is not great, but they've got great capacity, then the exercise won't be truckloads of calf raises. It might be a calf raise with real cues on the way they're doing their calf raise, and then taking that to a gait cue. Like, you don't have to hit everything in one go, or make it a cookie cutter version, like everyone gets 3 sets of 10 calf raises. So yeah, just like finding out where it fits for them from those 3 or 4 big things. Because I could give people 10 exercises, but it decreases their likelihood to do them. It clouds the issue. There's a whole lot of talk going on anyway, so they're hardly going to remember anything. And so I'm giving them 3 or 4 bang for your buck things. Generally, it'll be footwear and 2 or 3 exercises, maybe toe spaces, and some lifestyle stuff as well. And I'm then going into detail these exercises. They take a video of me doing them, a video of them doing them sometimes. We do them together, talk about how it's going to look. A lot of education about the expectations on their pain or their function. And we go from there. If they're in acute pain, I might try and calm them down a little bit, like calm things, not their brain, but the injury down. So that would be another facet. And then build it up, explaining that's what we're doing. And we might see them sooner, like maybe in 2 to 4 weeks. But if it's like a long-term thing, I'm looking at 4 to 6 weeks for a review, because it gives them time to let all this settle in. It tells them that we're not expecting to be better in 4 to 6 weeks, that it's a long-term process. It's a habitual changes. So I definitely set up my practice to have long reviews, for sure.
You say
so that's in a nutshell. Sorry.
No. That's great. I love the nutshell.
That's it. Yeah.
There's a lot in there, and we could probably zoom in on a lot of those different aspects, which I think would be good.
Yeah.
I'm interested to get, in a nutshell, in what ways is that different to the way you used to apply podiatry, or I guess the way you were taught to in uni, or what, I guess, the generalization of what traditional podiatry would do?
I don't know what other podiatrists are doing much at the moment, but I know they probably don't have that hour-long initial consultation.
Okay, so yeah, what did your initial consultation used to be?
I was definitely doing 30 minutes, and then when I started this 5 years ago, it was 45, and then I went out to an hour and a quarter, and now I've brought it back to an hour because it's just too much information in an hour and a quarter. I was trying to pack it all in, and it's actually better to get someone back maybe a bit sooner and do less just because it's too much information on that first one. But I think a lot of people are doing half an hour initials or 45-minute initials, and maybe they're just diagnosing in that time and then getting them back for an assessment, or telling them like basically what's going on, then going back into a detailed assessment where it would be a biomechanical analysis with an orthotic prescription. And maybe they're calming stuff down with some shockwave therapy and laser, like getting someone back on a weekly basis, or doing I think dry needling is quite popular now. There's a lot of what I call do something isms. Like, okay, someone's coming to see me, I must do something to fix this person. And so these are you've bought this fancy shockwave machine, which costs, I don't know, I've never even looked into how much they cost, but I think they cost a lot, and you have to pay it off. So this is like the skeptic in me big time. And I'm not sure, I'm sure people are getting some benefit from them. Research says there is some benefit from them, but someone's got plantar heel pain, they've had it for 12 months, they're seeing you, and they're coming to see you, and they're paying. There's a lot of input on us as health professionals, a lot of impetus for us to fix them, and part of my education to my clients is that I'm not going to fix you. Natural history has this. Your body is healing this. We're just trying to create an environment that makes that a bit more readily available to your body to heal this. And so I'm going to try and help you along that path. Whereas I think a lot of traditional health practitioners are still trying to be the one that fixes it. And you see it. They say, people will come in and say, I want you to fix me. I straight away say, I'm not going to be fixing you. Your body's got this in hand. I'm just going to be guiding you on fixing this.
Like on that point then, you sort of said that you weren't trying to calm their brain down, but do you think that whole process does actually calm their brain down? Like, and yeah, I guess how have you seen the response from the client change as opposed to what you used to do? Having the longer time, going through the education, just chatting to them, like how has it changed their reaction in that first session?
Definitely. And when I said that, when I was meaning we try and calm the foot down or the injury down, but all of this process is calming them down, giving them confidence that it's in hand, that it's going to take, that it's normal that it takes a while, that it's going to take a while, that their body has got it under control. Like for them to hear that gives them confidence as opposed to them having to rely on coming to see me. And so it definitely makes a big difference in that sense as well, which is great for the healing process as well.
Does that sink in quickly though? I mean, I feel like
hugely.
I'm wondering whether, like, if someone's come to you and like you were saying, they want that fix. They want that fix in that session, and then they're sitting there and they're learning a lot, obviously, and they're being empowered. But yeah, can it happen that quickly?
I think the people that come to see me now, and this is a lot of like TFC refers to me, other health practitioners refer to me because of this approach. So people are coming, and because of what we've spoken to these people on the phone beforehand, they're coming to some extent forewarned. I only see 2 new musculoskeletal clients a day, which even if I've got a spot in the day, I don't fill that spot. It pushes back the wait for a new client. So some people are waiting anywhere from 2 to 8 weeks to see me, depending on timing and things like that. And straight away, this takes the impetus out of, I need to be fixed now.
Fix.
The quick fix. And you know what? A lot of the time, they're already they might have had the pain for 2 months when they reach out to me. 6 weeks later, it's less already. I'm like, that's your body healing this. You're on the way. We're just going to hopefully get you to a point where it maybe happens a bit quicker. And if it doesn't happen quicker, when you get out the other side, you'll understand your body better. It's maybe less likely to happen again. Like we can't guarantee anything, but you're going to be equipped with the tools that if it does happen again, you'll be in a better place to deal with it yourself or use me as a resource, going forward. I don't know if that helps. And I'm not sure if I answered Jim's question properly before. I think there's this, for those regular health professionals, that you need to get people coming back. Like you need to get them rebooking. And I'm like, I want to finish with people the most after 4 sessions, if anything, 1 to 3. And it's not seeing them every week at all. I'm teaching them their wife or partner or child or whatever to tape their foot if they need that to calm things down. Like equipping them with the tools rather than getting them back over and over again. It breeds confidence in themselves.
Definitely.
Yeah.
There's something that I think is worth touching on is you mentioned natural history and the fact that the body is obviously a healing machine. Yeah. We talk about it being a self-organizing, self-healing machine, but if there's someone who's had a persistent pain for 12 months, well, technically it's over 3 months, is
It's chronic, yeah.
chronic pain, persistent pain. I imagine people are coming to you with persistent or recurrent pain or injury that's been going on for up to years, decades. So how are you explaining to them that concept? Like, it's not natural history then, it's extended beyond natural history.
Yeah.
So what's your approach to helping them understand that, yes, their body is a healing machine and it can do it itself, but why hasn't it?
That's where I think the environment that their body's in is probably a big part of the equation. Like, if they keep doing the same thing, their body's going to still be in pain. It's very hard for the body to adapt if it keeps being fed the wrong ingredients for adaptation to help heal. And so I'll be talking about that type of thing. And mostly they know themselves already. They just intuitively know it could be a weight issue, a food issue, a lifestyle in terms of movement issue. And so I think those long-term pain ones often have that stuff going on, or there's been a really acute injury that hasn't been rehabbed very well. And so that means there's probably going to be a functional element to it as well. And so it's just going to be weeks, months of rehab to get them moving better. It's almost easier when there's been long-term pain, because the expectation that they've learned how to deal with pain. The expectation is far decreased than someone that's had heel pain for 2 months.
And I guess the gains as well and the progress they see is far more noticeable.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be much. Oh, great. Like, I'm now less painful when I get out of bed. They still have pain when they get out of bed, but it's less painful. They're in tune with their pain.
Yeah.
And so they pick up those little differences very easily and have lower expectations for feeling less pain. They don't even expect to be out of pain. So that makes my job, easier to some extent. There's lower expectations, and it doesn't take much to make a change, because if there's those big boulders that need to be moved to help the body heal, you move them and stuff starts changing pretty quickly, and so then they're on. Footwear is that one that is the biggest one, because habitually people have been in shoes that aren't appropriate for their feet and have led to chronic pain. And so changing, like, people to say, where have these shoes been my whole life? Like, why weren't people talking about these shoes before? Like, why have I put up with this pain for 10 years and no one has said, change my shoes? Like, it just blows them away.
It's a real odd one.
Yeah.
We ask that question to each other every day. And I guess that's a good lead into this pain versus function concept. As you said, your patient demographic is generally a bit more function focused, or they're like open to not having this laser focus on their pain.
Yeah.
What are you going to do to fix my pain? Obviously they are there, generally people are there because they're in pain.
Yeah.
So how do you and I think that's probably where this like you said, do somethingism comes from, and it's a very natural thing. If you're a practitioner, you want to help people, you want to help reduce suffering, you have a business model that's built around helping people reduce suffering, and they're coming to you specifically to reduce their pain or to eliminate their pain. And so that's where this, like, well, any tool I can use to help reduce or eliminate this pain is good and is worth this person coming back to do that.
Yeah.
And I think where that laser focus on pain leads you is towards dependence, generally. Dependence on external technologies, external support, footwear, orthotics, and so on. But a lot of it comes down to the narrative of why those tools are being used, how they're being used, and I think a lot of that comes into the time that the practitioner has to educate the patient. So, if you're getting 30 minutes of pain-focused treatment and an orthotic with like minimal education or education that the client doesn't really get or understand, then naturally their takeaway is, well, that's what fixed me, or that's what helped my pain.
Yeah.
And so therefore if pain happens again, then I just need more of that. So how do you manage that focus on pain versus, say, a focus on improving function?
Pain looks after itself once.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't focus on it. I don't ask what it is out of 10. I don't, and people that have been to other health practitioners love to tell me what is out of 10. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I wouldn't even say that, but I think to myself, like, it's not that important to me that's what, like, so we just don't make a focus of it. I talk more about, okay, so if you could, I often ask the question, if you could walk, could you walk 5 kilometers around the block with this, would your foot get sore then? And so they're, or they might say, oh, I used to walk the dog and I can't now. So when they're coming back, I'm asking them, oh, are you able to walk the dog? Oh, you know, like, or we're setting in a program about them getting back to walking the dog. I'll be like, I want you walking the dog tomorrow. But if 10 minutes is too painful, let's just do 5 minutes and let's graduate the load. So that straight away we're buying into, oh, I can do this, like a bit more active, proactive thing. And then with pain, like, I don't want to ever say to people that their pain is not important. So if it's something that I can see, or they're telling me that this pain is really debilitating, again, I won't do pretty much anything. Maybe taping. I might tape them to help with plantar heel pain, but mostly I'm asking them to do things that they can do for themselves. And that will be heat or ice, because some people still find ice more comfortable than heat, but generally I'll get them to use heat because it's comforting for the brain, it's helpful for healing. And I'm explaining, this is what I want you to do. I want you to give your foot some love. I want you to feel good about your feet. I'll get them to do movement before they stand. So, you know, some ankle cars, some calf pumps before they stand, after being in the car for a while, after sitting on the couch, after anything at rest, and before getting up out of bed, to get some movement going so that they don't have this, like, I think a lot of that first step foot pain, which can be an acute inflammation thing, can be because there's been rest and then there's just accumulated fluid in the foot and we want to get it moving. So that just helps. It's just like a practical tool for feeling less pain. I might get them to do some ball rolling. I'll talk to them about the other things they could do: cortisone, laser, needling, mobilizations, shockwave therapy, and explain what those are doing. Like, I understand what the sell is on those. Like, and I'll say, this would help you with your pain for this reason, but you'll have to go back and see someone regularly, and I want to equip you with these tools. They may not be immediately more effective, but if you're doing them 5 days a week rather than seeing someone once a week, I think that's probably going to be more effective for your pain, and it's giving you tools to help that. And so that maybe in 6 years' time, when you have foot pain again, you've got, oh, I remember last time I did this, 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 and this, and it stops you even going to see someone because you just looked after yourself. So I don't dismiss pain, but it's not the focus. And if I'm writing some instructions, there's a little bit at the top for pain: ankle cars, heat, ball rolling, avoid the sore spot, as in don't do things that aggravate it intensely. And then all this is for rehabbing like, there's a focus. Like, my focus is on getting you more functional, and that just brings their focus on that as well.
It's all education and transparency. It's like, that's all it is. It's like, if you can just explain what's actually going on instead of holding the keys and making the client feel like they need you to know the answers.
I semi-joke that I've come up with these ideas because I'm inherently lazy. I don't want people to rely upon me. Like, I want them to be equipped to do it themselves. Like, I hate going to see a health practitioner because I've got a pain. Like, I'd rather know what to do myself. So if my foot gets sore, the first thing I do is chuck a heat pack on it, put it in the end of the bed when I go to sleep, move it around before I get up, like, just change my activities. Like, I want other people to be able to do that, and not rely on me. I don't like people coming to see me and saying they've still got pain or they've got a new pain, and like, I feel, I don't like that feeling of being responsible for people. And so I don't want people saying, oh, he fixed me or anything like that. And you see all over social media, I love going to see this guy, he's always fixing my feet are so thankful. Not about me, about other practitioners, and the practitioners are posting that stuff. You know, and it's like, oh, look at me, I'm like, this health practitioners have this, a lot of them, this godlike, like, oh, I fix people. I think it should be more like facilitators for people to be well.
It was a simple reframe of just the difference between asking about how their pain is the following session versus leading with asking how their function is. Because generally, for the most part, the reason they're seeing you for their pain is because they're limited in some kind of function that they want to get back to. So yes, you're kind of asking about both at the same time, but
Yeah.
the fact that you're asking about the actual activity,
Yeah.
how have you gone walking your dog?
Yeah.
Not how much is your pain out of 10 this week after what we did. Because then each time that happens, or each time you sort of reframe the conversation to focus on function, consciously or subconsciously, the client starts to then focus on that function.
Yeah.
Or you might even just focus on how many times per day, or how many days out of this last 2 weeks did you do the exercises, or
Yeah.
and it's like, well, I did them once, and my pain's not better. Okay, well, let's try doing the exercises every day.
Yeah.
To see if that helps. Like, and it's.
I then talk about minimum dose effectiveness. So
Yeah.
like, you know what, we can't expect to see changes with once a week. We need to look at it 3 or 4 times a week. Why couldn't you do them more often?
Yeah.
How can we make them so they're more, more applicable to doing more often? Like, what can we do to fit this in your life better? Like, this is where that relational stuff is so important. Yeah.
I have evolved to think of it more as like a coaching role, like you said, like a facilitator.
Yeah.
You're essentially coaching them through the process of self-regulation.
Yeah.
Because people do need that. Like, if they haven't actually experienced or built the confidence on how to regulate themselves based on the feedback that they're getting, how to adjust load based on they have no concept of how to interpret their body's feedback and adjust their lifestyle or their load accordingly. And so literally just helping them do that.
Yeah.
Each session is like a new lesson of like, okay, well, what did you do this week?
Yeah.
How much of it did you do? What symptoms did you experience?
Yeah.
And what can we change now to adapt to that?
Because
can we progress things? Do we regress things?
Yeah.
And then they go, and then, like I said, subconsciously or consciously, they're like, get the habit of, okay, that's what I do. When a new symptom comes on, I analyze, what did I do? What can I change? And then it builds, it basically comes back to that concept of self-efficacy, which is basically the most well-researched indicator of an outcome is how much self-efficacy someone has, which is their confidence that they are in control of their own outcome.
Yeah.
And you say how in tune they are with their pain, but really they just need to be more in tune with the function of their body.
Yeah.
And what that's trying to tell them. Because they know what hurts,
Yeah.
but it's what is the hurt trying to tell them.
And so people come back and they're like, oh, I can do this now. I can move my toes.
Yeah.
I can just move my toes. Oh,
Yeah.
I love
can
it
do,
when that
I can
happens.
do 14 calf raises now, and I can only do 3 single, and so then that becomes their focus, and they know that's what's going to be important to me as their practitioner. Like, that's what I'm going to want to hear. And so it takes his focus away from the pain.
Sorry to chime in there. I've had clients, some recently, where they'll be like, yeah, I've done this walk, I've been doing this, and this. Like, they don't mention their pain at all. And then I'm like, oh, okay, so how is your feet feeling with that? Like, because they've just led with all of that. And they're like, oh yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
Like,
that's right. That's what
yeah. Or they'll be like, oh yeah, there was still some pain, but I'm doing all that. Like, and I'm not worried about it because it's improving. And
or they understand why it's sore. And if they understand why it's sore, they know, like, their foot's not going to fall off. It's not going to be detrimental to their long-term health because you've explained what's going on. Just on what you said before about being a coach, to help people learn to be more
just to self-regulate.
Yeah, to self-regulate. And they don't know how to do that because our health system is set up that as soon as you feel something, you take a pill, you go to the doctor, you go to the physio, whatever. And like, I was definitely like that as a junior runner. I would go to the physio, like my parents would just take me to the physio as soon as anything went wrong, Whereas like my son now, his back goes out, probably because he sits all day, like a lot playing computer games and stuff. We don't take him to the osteo. I'm like, oh, here's some stretches you can do and make sure you get up and move. Like, instead of, like, our whole health system's about going for that magic pill that the health practitioner will give you when something goes wrong. And so that's why it's such a foreign way for people to think, because anything that goes wrong with our bodies, we just think we have to give that over to someone else to fix.
Yeah.
Because of the business model of health.
And if there's a symptom, then there's, something wrong, and therefore we need to find out what's wrong so that we can. So the case in point, and I think that actually feeds into the pain continuing.
Yeah.
Whereas I've had a couple of things recently where I'll wake up one morning and my knee's like really hurting and I can't squat down. And I'm like, oh, that's really weird. And maybe that would be something that someone would go and check out. And then I'm like, oh, yesterday I was doing like this new exercise where I hang a kettlebell off my foot and I straighten it out into like a kick. And I'm like, that might have been too much for me because I was like playing around and going really heavy and I haven't built up to that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then I go, oh, it'll just fix itself over the next few days because that's my body warning me, hey, you've done too much. And I'm like, I can actually squat down.
Yeah.
There's no clicking, locking. There's not like a physical restriction. It just hurts to squat down. So therefore the function is still present. There's pain there that's warning me I did too much. Just chill for a bit.
Yeah.
And then 4 or 5 days later, I was absolutely fine. Went to the US and did like heaps of movement, ran events, all the stuff. And it was completely fine. But I could have probably gone to a practitioner and they would have analyzed my body. They would have looked at my foot function. They told me all these things that's wrong. And then possibly if I'd gone to a physio, they would have done a lot of, this is a very generalized, assumption, but a physio got some manual therapy, some dry needling. A podiatrist might have given me orthotics because my XYZ is out of whack. Whichever, a chiropractor might have manipulated me. Yeah. Again, I'm not having a go at these professions, but it's, the concept is that if you actually understand broad principles such as load management, then you can interpret those things and not worry about it and therefore allow the natural healing to take place.
And like, I think what we see with members of our community and what I find the most rewarding from some of the messages we get or what we see going on in the online community, it's not the people who post and say, I'm fixed, my feet feel amazing. It's the people who go, a little bit of pain flared up the other day. I decided, I'd probably done a little bit too much of this. I backed that off and now it's starting to feel better. But it's witnessing people who came in with that pain mindset who are now going, I know this is going to take a long time. I now know what my body's trying to tell me when it does flare up. Yeah. And I can do it myself because I've got the tools to do it. I'd be interested to know, to be honest, I'd be interested to know what you see from people who've been referred from TFC are like when they come into clinic, because I'm guessing they'd be a little bit different to you.
So first on your example, like in that first 15 minutes, we've tried to nut out with the client what's been the trigger, and there's nearly always a trigger, and some don't know, but we just like sort through, and most do know what the trigger was, and then they're wondering why it's still there, and that's often because once it got sore, it never got a chance to get better because of their footwear or because of something like that. So that's super important because load management is kind of king. And then like you did, you just backed off a bit. And so then I'm educating them. That doesn't mean you can't do that. It just means you didn't have the capacity to do that. We're going to find out what needs the capacity to do that and work on that. And then you meet halfway sort of thing.
And the other important thing there is I didn't stop moving. I kept testing my squat. I kept walking. I kept doing everything I could do pain-free, and I kept going down into the squat position and being like, oh, it's still sore. It's still a bit sore. But I wasn't fearful of that position. I didn't think it was going to be causing more damage. And so that continuing to move, I actually think people's acute injuries turn into persistent injuries when they stop moving.
Yeah. And they go to see someone and get told all this bad stuff about what their body's doing. And that's the other overwhelming thing that people would come away from a consultation with me is how positive I am about the way they move. Like I'm not really bringing it. I will say something needs more capacity or we need to work on that. But generally, if they're have a foot that struggles to get out of that more rolled in position, I'll be saying that you're really good at pronating. Like you're amazing at that. Like I wish I could shock absorb as well as you do. But hey, let's get better at pushing off. That positivity about movement. Whereas most health practitioners are saying there is something wrong with you, inherently wrong with you, that needs fixing, possibly forever. It could be like. I would suggest that no one has a straight spine, either one way or the other.
Well, certainly no one does. There's always.
I would say that everyone has one leg longer than the other. That no one's foot is perfect, and if we keep, and so we can find something wrong with everyone that gives us an excuse to bring them back to the clinic on a regular basis. But that's not the health model that I want to be part of. And I'm not doing anything magic. I'm not like giving like the best exercises or anything like that. I'm giving the most basic things, but along with understanding why they have pain and changing a few of the big rocks, then that's what's making a difference. And that's the other thing I was going to say before I answer your question. I haven't forgotten it. Sorry, is that to have confidence to not get people back soon and explain why you're not getting them back soon. Like, because if your book's not full and you know you could see the person next week, it's very easy to say, "Oh, I want to see you next week." When they come back and they're still in pain, you change the prescription, you change what you're doing. You never even gave it a chance to work, and you're also telling that person that there's something wrong again because they didn't work.
Yeah.
Their confidence in you just decreased because week 1 stuff didn't work, and you want to see them again in week 2, and then it doesn't work again, or it's still not progressing, and then they're suddenly analysing every little thing instead of going, okay, this is a long, slow process. I'm going to change these
Where's
big
that
things.
relationship
Yeah.
gone? You
So,
know, like,
yeah.
where is the relationship?
So it's about having confidence that if you send them out into the wild for 2 to 6 weeks, equipped with these basics, then and if they come back and they're only 10% better or no better, that's okay. Like, let's just reset and start again. Like, have that confidence to do that, because then they have a chance to get better, and that's when they're going to talk to their other health practitioners, and then they're not going to tell their family and friends that they're being overserviced. I've got, oh, you're going to the podiatrist again. Oh, gee, you're going to the podiatrist a lot. Oh, you're going to the podiatrist again. If someone went 6 weeks later, oh, you're going again? Yeah, but I wasn't there for 6 weeks, and this is where we're at, So the self-confidence, I still lack it with every client, but you just have to go, you know what? It's okay. Like, it's actually better if it takes longer to see them.
That's actually a good point, because even if you were seeing them in a week and we'll get back to the other question. I can't even remember what it was.
I've got it.
As one of you remember.
You got it there.
Yeah.
But just while we're on that point, even if you were seeing them for more active stuff, like say you're not seeing them just to massage their foot and make them feel a little bit better in a week, it still is subconsciously or like implicitly saying that they need you to keep to make this better.
Yeah.
Whereas if you like, you're kind of the underlying message there is you trust their body to organize when you give them these inputs, and if they saw you again in a week, you'd probably overwhelm them with too much stuff to do anyway. So it's like, just do the most bang for your buck stuff consistently for the next, and just see how you go.
Yeah.
Long time.
And I'm here,
That's how I do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also it's quite simple stuff. And if you have this overarching principle that no one is perfect or no one moves perfectly, then you don't even have to change them into a better way of moving. It just has to be a different way of moving, and create a different variable, so that half the time they're using their big toe when they push off rather than all their lesser toes. And that's probably enough to take the sting out of their neuroma between their third and fourth met, because half the time they're now using a different movement pattern. The other half of the time, they're still not in an ideal movement pattern, but it's still a movement pattern. There's no good or bad one. It's just a different one.
Well, it's just the one that they've been forced into because of a restriction, so they don't have the option of doing the
So
other.
give them another option.
Yeah.
And that brings it back to load management. It's not load management as in, did you run 40 Ks this week and then 80 Ks next week, or 5 Ks then 20 Ks. It's more about load management at the very acute level, at the very localized level, just giving the body some different options, or even if they keep moving the same way, to get stronger in that way of movement so that they can cope with it, have more capacity for it. Or
there's like the macro load management and the micro.
Yeah, micro. So you're just changing that, and so then, and we know that any strength or mobility thing takes a long time to implement. Like I don't know if the first month might be just a neurological change. The second month might see some connective tissue changes. The third month we'll see some actual muscular strength changes. So if you're expecting something to change in a week, you're actually in a rehab program. You're kind of missing the overarching principle that change takes a long time anyway.
And to build the consistency to allow it to be sustained.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'll be telling people, I'm going to see you in 5 weeks' time. If you have a week off because you're going on holiday, or the shit hits the fan in some other way, don't worry, just get back on the horse. And if you only do it twice a week or once a week to start with, but then you build it up and it takes you 3 weeks to get shoes, that's okay. We're human. Like, I don't want soldiers like coming out of my office like bang bang. This is a life that you have to make this
Yeah.
into this work into, and so I'm taking the expectation out.
Well, you lose. Otherwise, you
Immediately.
lose faith.
Yeah.
You know, if you've been given this regimen that you've got to do, and then go see the practitioner a week
Yeah.
later, and you haven't done it,
Yeah.
it's like, well,
I'm paying for
I've
nothing. Yeah.
been defeated.
Yeah.
And it's probably the practitioner's fault as well. But yeah, by just giving them faith that they can do this for the next 2 to 6 weeks. We wanted to take a quick break from the episode to let you know about our ultimate free foot health resource. If you're listening, you've probably already started the journey towards improving your foot and movement health, but if you're still wearing conventional shoes most of the time, that's anything cushioned, heeled, narrow or rigid, it's kind of like taking 1 step forward and 2 steps back. Knowing what shoe is right for you though can be super confusing. That's why we made the Guide to Foot Freedom. We've taken everything our team of foot health experts have learned over the years and synthesized it into one handy manual, packed with all you need to know about unleashing the natural power of your foundation. You'll learn how to understand your feet, the truth about modern footwear, the 5 F's for finding natural footwear, plus a step-by-step guide with training videos to help you assess your foot function and improve it so you can safely and seamlessly transition into shoes that will finally give your feet freedom. The best part is, like I said, it's absolutely free. Just head to thefootcollective.com and click Learn to find the free ebook, The Guide to Foot Freedom. You'll find the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode.
And so back to your question, what are the people that are referred through TFC? So some that come through TFC haven't done any of your programs and they've got pain and they are just looking for a personalised approach. And so obviously they've already got their head in the game about changing their shoes, but they might have been hearing TFC stuff and thinking, oh, I don't know about changing shoes, and just want, some people are more wary of making a big change like that, and so they don't want to do it without me checking them off first.
To make sure it's right for them.
Yeah, make sure it's right. Like, look, I've got this heel pain. How am I meant to go barefoot? It hurts more walking around barefoot.
Yeah.
So they'll come and see me there, and so then it's about tailor making the program so that they might go into a wide flat shoe but has some cushioning, or put a cushion in it, or so there's that aspect of people, and I guess that's most of the people that come from TFC that are a bit wary. And then there's the other ones that have done some of your programs, and like, I love your programs, but I only see the ones that haven't been successful with it because they've got pain still.
Yeah.
And so if 300 people do your program, then I might see 3 of them. So that's a good thing for TFC. Like, it's obviously making a big difference for a lot of people, but I see the 3 that it hasn't worked for, and that might be because they need a bit more nuance to their program, or they've gone too hard, or they haven't implemented it properly, or they're just someone that needs a bit more of their hand held to some extent.
And I think that's the whole point of why we're sitting talking to you, is because we need more of you. Because the first thing we want to be recommending to people is that they do go and see an Andy, because that is, if you're in pain, you can save a lot of time and energy if you get that good advice from the outset.
Yeah.
And, sadly, I think a lot of people, who probably end up in your office after doing the other stuff is just because they weren't able to get access to that advice at the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's not that it hasn't helped them along the way, but there are just cases where you can save a lot of time if you are empowered from the beginning from someone who can point out just a few little things to really target.
Yeah.
Because, yes, you can learn to listen to your body, but you can save a lot of time by having someone who can see it and who's got the experience of seeing a lot of people who've come through their door with
specific issues. And I can think of 2 that have come from you guys that have done the Explorer program, or are through it, halfway through it when they're doing, but they've still got their pain, and they're wondering, is it going to be enough? And so then, but they've like, but I can now do this. I couldn't do this at the start, and I can do this and this and this. So they're already tapping in to this idea of function being more important than pain. But I just wanted to see you because I've still got this pain. Is this going to be like, maybe if they hadn't have seen me, that in 6 months' time they'd be out of their pain anyway. But I then say, look, that's a lot of work to be doing when you've still got this pain. So let's refine the work so that's all about managing your condition specifically, rather than we probably don't need to worry about this or this bit. So then we like I take the bits and pieces of what you guys have given them and say, I like this bit, and this bit, and let's add these two things as well.
Because what we sort of come to is really what that program is trying to do is, yes, it's to educate you about, you know, the importance of foot health and balance and improving your squat and all of these baselines, but really the biggest lesson that everyone learns from that journey is the mindset. And I guess that's what I was really trying to probe for is, do you find that those people who have done that program, it's the mindset shift that
100%,
makes...
And I was about to say, I love, like when someone comes from TFC, I'm like, oh, this will be easier on me. They've already got so much of the education, like that underlying education. I'm not going to have to teach them what a minimalist shoe is because you guys have taught them that stuff. And then they're already in the mindset of improving function, but pain is still, like the ones that are only worried about improving function aren't coming to see me. So the pain is still affecting their day-to-day life. But makes my job so much easier. Because they've been through, like that's the benefit of being the TFC Pro. Like people come knowing what they want in terms of function over pain management, and knowing that it's a long, slow process. They've got the right mindset straight up.
That's really, I think that's a really important point because that basically is what we want to do is take a lot of the pressure off the practitioner to do all of that education and to, we want people to be coming to professionals already armed with the education and some experience of training their feet and playing with different, or like understanding foot function. And I think, like you said, if there's 1,000 people with foot pain, I'm just chucking numbers out here, but 1,000 people with foot pain, maybe 80% of those people could drastically improve, maybe even eliminate their foot pain, get back to their function just by doing some basic exercises and by understanding their pain. And so being educated and doing some basic training, they're going to be like, oh, sweet, I'm sorted. And then 20% of those are going to be like, no, there's still something going wrong and I need individualized help. I think all of them would probably benefit from getting individualized help from the right person from the get-go. But it's like we're casting this net out here and it's like, here's all this education and training. Of course, if you've got a specific condition, then, try and get to a practitioner. But if you can't, then start with this. And then, a lot of people just find, well, okay, I'm sorted now. I don't really need to go and see a practitioner, and that's great.
Yeah.
But then there will always be those people that need specialized help, and that's why we're so focused on building this network. And because we get asked by so many people, like, where can we? Yeah. Where I'm here. Where can I go to find a practitioner? And there just isn't enough practitioners who are on this wavelength, at least when it comes to feet at the moment.
Yeah.
I guess what I was going to say is, like, I think the time that you save as well allows for those relationships that you build to be built quicker and stronger. Because if you're not having to spend a lot of time with education, then you've got more time to actually build a connection with this person. And you're speaking the same language from the outset. So finding the common ground.
In a way, you've already built a relationship through having the shared values of TFC. This is what we found with all the foot nerds. Whenever you meet a foot nerd that you haven't met before, or someone in the TFC community, you automatically have a deeper connection with them without even knowing them, really. It's just you know what they value, you know what they're about. They're open-minded. They like to play and have fun. There's just those preset relationships. So now if someone comes from TFC, they've already seen or listened to Andy on our podcast. We kind of already know what he's about. And so when they come, it's like there's already that.
There is definitely
that familiarity.
I've think done maybe like 40 podcasts in the last 3 years. Like I will never say no to a podcast unless I've said no to 2 because they're for orthotic companies. And I'm like, I don't think we're going to have so much nice stuff to talk about. And so, and so the people that have listened to these podcasts, and they could just be someone that listened to a TFC podcast, or it could be like there's a local yoga teacher that I get referrals from all over the place because people listen to her podcast. And I chatted to her like 3 years ago, and people come as though they already know me. Like they're sitting in the waiting room, they see me, and it's like a familiar, whatever that word is, familiarity immediately, because that's him, Oh yeah, I've listened to. I know when I listen to people on podcasts, you get to feel like you know them,
Absolutely.
whether you've met them or not. That's
Mhm.
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so it does break down that barrier and makes it so much easier to have that something relational straight away.
And I guess what we're trying to build as well is like, not everyone's going to be able to be on the podcast, and you're not going to be able to have that, that grounding of a
Yeah.
relationship from the outset. But if you can go to a directory where you know that the people that are there have said that they align with these values, then you at least go in with a bit of hope and reassurance that you're going to be on the same page to some degree.
You know, you say that not everyone can be on the podcast, but if you have like 100 people over the world as TFC pros, then
We are gradually getting more on the
We'll
podcast.
tick them off
that's
eventually.
like one a week for 2 years.
Yeah.
And suddenly, the guy that's in, Auckland, New Zealand, wants to find a TFC pro, and there's a podcast, and that just sets up that relationship straight away. They know what to expect from
Yeah.
you.
And that is actually what we want, is to have those connections with pros, get deep on their story, get deep on their approach, really understand them ourselves, and then have everyone else be able to listen to that and connect with that. And it does broaden. Like, there might be another podiatrist who we interview who doesn't do things exactly like you, and then you listen to that, they listen to yours, and then you go, oh, well, what can I learn from that? And everyone it's like a hive mind. Everyone's learning from each other's approach.
Yeah, and I was going to say that I just don't do manual therapy, and I don't do any of those other things because like, it's just not what I...
Because you're lazy.
Well, possibly because I'm inherently lazy. Like, I've never trained myself to do those things. I just don't feel like giving that service. But some people do, and they love it. And I don't mind them. Like, that's great. That's a business model. They're still helping people, but as long as they're educating as to why it's working, and they're not building that
that's
reliance,
the big thing.
not building that reliance, then it's like a red flag for me if you're saying, oh, we need to dry needle you. You know, like if I'm saying roll a ball out, use heat, and do some taping, whatever, to help with pain, and someone's saying, well, I'm going to dry needle you to help with pain, that will help you today. Like, because I can see you're in acute pain. This is going to help you today. If you found it helpful and you want me to do that again, well, I'm here for you. But you don't need to be sold. Over the next 6 weeks, you need to be here 6 weeks every time to have shockwave therapy, because we've seen that really helps heal pain. Look, it might help heal pain, but when that person gets heal pain again in a year's time, they'll be like, oh, I need to go and have another 6 weeks of shockwave therapy because that's what fixed my pain. So...
the client or patient always leaves with some kind of underlying message or an understanding of what is going on, and you've only got so much time, especially if you're doing 30-minute consults. You've only got so much time with someone to, if you're going to spend X amount on shockwave therapy, X amount on dry needling, and possibly orthotic prescription, and trying to explain why you're doing all of those things in the context of an active approach, like, suddenly is just overwhelming. But the patient can't leave with all of that information. They just leave with a general theme of like, my foot is damaged, or like, I'm really tight and stiff, and so I need needles. But or like, it may not even be consciously registered, but they are leaving with like a theme of like, okay, there's something wrong with me and it needs to be fixed by someone.
Unfortunately, the money is where that mind often goes. And so if the orthotic is going to cost like $800, then, that'll be the thing that fixes me, Or if shockwave therapy is $100 every week for the next 6 weeks, that's $600. Well, I guess that'll be the thing that fixes me. If my initial consultation is $200 and goes for an hour, and it's mostly about education, and they're being given exercises to do for the next 6 weeks without coming to see me, where might you think that they're going to think the fixes for them doing stuff and me educating them about doing that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't give them something that costs money, then they have to do the rehab. Otherwise, they're putting a lot of money into me talking to them, with them.
Whereas, a hybrid model, and everyone's going to practice differently, but a hybrid model where the patient or the client is pre-educated on, what these therapies do and the aim of these therapies in the context of an active, empowering approach, and someone, they understand that they do need to transition towards natural footwear. They understand that they need to work on their foot function. And then someone goes in to see a practitioner who does some manual therapy, but uses it by going, okay, well, let's assess this. this is a bit restricted, do some manual therapy, see how that opened up. This is how you do that yourself
Thank
at
you.
home.
That's right.
This is how you test, retest,
Yeah.
and it becomes a whole training session,
Yes.
basically, using some of those tools that can be very helpful for opening up movement. And it's like, see, and the reason this worked is because it, decreased the protective outputs from your nervous system, and you already know why the nervous system is protective because you've listened to this podcast about pain.
Yeah.
And you already know that you need to be working on different elements of your health over time because you've listened to this podcast about the principles of rehab. Like,
Yeah.
you can just fit so much more into a session and use all of your tools without disempowering the client, basically. Yeah.
And even just the change of perspective on the orthotic being the expensive tool you need to fix you, to actually just investing in shoes that are going to fix you, because people balk at the price of some barefoot shoes and say how ridiculously expensive they are, and yet they would go and buy a pair of shoes that are half the price and put an orthotic in them,
which
is worth 3 or 4 times as much.
Yeah.
And so,
custom made.
Well, I mean,
That's another subject.
to play devil's advocate there.
Yeah.
It's not the shoes that fix. It's
not
the orthotic. It's not the shoe. Even if it's natural footwear, that's not the fix. The fix is the change in load. I feel.
Yeah.
And it's the change in function. So equally, an orthotic and a natural footwear can provide a change in load and a change in function.
That's exactly.
And so if that is the understanding, it's like these shoes are just a tool to provide a different input into my feet, which is the input that they're desiring right now.
Yeah.
So actually, on that note, are there times, you've told me before that you will sometimes move someone towards a wider, flatter shoe, but maybe keep their orthotic in if they're still struggling to go without the orthotic, which I imagine is relatively common. Are there times where you prescribe orthotics?
There are. So for certain conditions that are really acute, and there's, like for an example, tibialis posterior dysfunction. So this is a condition that progresses. So as it gets weaker, instead of a tendon usually getting stronger when it's sore, this gets progressively weaker, and then the foot changes shape more because of that. And so it's a progressive disorder that you might need to give some mechanical help to in the short term, while some other stuff's going on in the background. Some people, if they're not doing the other stuff in the background, will end up in that orthotic forever.
Yeah.
Another example would be plantar heel pain that we've just thrown, 3 or 4 consultations over 6 months have gone by, and we're really struggling, and we just want to unload the heel. And so I just use an orthotic in that situation. This is when I'm prescribing it in the first place. If they've already got it, then I'll be having it in and out, like using it. But, and even that tib post one, rarely do I see the ones anyway that are so acute that I need to put it in straight away. I'm looking after a young girl at the moment who's diagnosed with a hypermobility disorder, and her mum has it as well. And she's got, the mum has really high arch feet, which is really unusual in a hypermobility disorder. Often they're really, really low arched feet, but she's got really high arched feet. And the mum's gone seeing an exercise physiologist and PT and really gone down the exercise path, and it's making a huge difference, and got out of orthotics. And the 6-year-old has got very similar feet. And so it makes sense to me, family history, that this girl's going to be fine without orthotics. And so we slowly removed her orthotics. I don't really give exercise rehab to a 6-year-old, but she's dancing, she's living a very active life, so that her body is developing as much as it can within that spectrum of the hypermobility disorder. But then we see one foot just like bottoming out all of a sudden almost. It might be to do with her growing. It might be, like, I don't even know why. And the theory tells me that it doesn't really matter that her one foot's bottoming out. But hypermobility disorder in the background, well, in the foreground, I'm putting like a gentle orthotic in that shoe to kind of hopefully fire up, like almost in a proprioceptive way, of the muscles in that area to help do something. Almost like
So
like kinesio tape type of thing. It's not like a big orthotic that just jams her into this different position. And we review it every 6 months, like
that's what I was going to ask. What's the difference
in a
between
minimalist shoe as well.
what would you call a gentle orthotic versus like a non-gentle?
Yeah, like when I used to
orthotic?
make orthotics
Is
myself.
it the height of
Yeah, or material as well.
the material?
When I used to make orthotics myself, we used this really thick. Well, it depended on how heavy the person was how thick we'd make the material, and we'd also make it so it wasn't only in one plane, like it was sometimes coming in from the side as well, because that would make it even stronger. And the idea was to block the movement or to really change the movement. But I think podiatry has progressed, even mainstream podiatry, well, I hope, has progressed beyond that, where we see an orthotic as more of a guidance of movement, or maybe a bit more proprioceptive. And so I think they're making them softer with a bit more nuance. And so a gentle orthotic is, more give. So it's like something that's more functional. They used to be rock hard, and some people still making them rock hard. Don't get me wrong.
So you could have an orthotic that still allowed like a natural pronation, shock absorption,
100%.
and then to come back, it would assist that.
Yeah, that's
natural
what I
supination.
hope's going on with that little girl. Like again, if she didn't have the hypermobility disorder, I would be saying like let's let it be. Like I see a lot of kids with worried parents or worried grandparents, and mostly it's about just showing how able this child is because they don't have pain. The research really shows clearly that we shouldn't be doing anything to kids if they don't have any discomfort or pain or functional issues. We should just be letting them be. But
As long as you're not actively disrupting their function with certain aspects of their environment.
Yeah.
So
But because she's got hypermobility, that clouds the issue. So they're the examples that I might use.
Yeah.
And in getting people rid of them, if they want to get rid of them, then I'll be helping them do that. You generally need less orthotic in a minimalist shoe because you've engaged. You have less pronatory moments when you take the heel away from heel strike, and like the heel away from a heeled shoe. And when you have the ability to use a straight big toe, then you are more easily getting out of that rolled in position, so you don't need the orthotic to help you so much. So as soon as you go into a wide, flatter shoe, I think you need less orthotic, so I can reduce it straight away. And then if we're doing rehab as well, then you often can get out of the orthotic for a long time.
when you say reduce it, do you mean reduce the
Stiffness.
The stiffness?
Yeah.
So you would do that by making. So you
I'd reduce. So the harder material of orthotic won't change its shape, but you can thin it out so it flexes more.
right,
So there's less pressure
and
into
you
the
can
foot.
you can thin it out.
Everyone's got every podiatrist has got a grinding wheel.
Yeah.
And I don't have one anymore, but I just go up to the other podiatrist up the road who
Yeah.
makes orthotics every day, and I've got a good agreement with him.
Yeah.
I teach his staff about some foot rehab stuff, and I get to use his lab occasionally. And it's just a 2-minute job to grind out an orthotic, so it's got a bit more flex in it.
Yeah.
That's how we do it. Yeah. So any material you do that with.
So I'm asking a lot of questions about orthotics.
Good.
Say you mentioned, I'm going to pick on this for some reason. The person who's not really progressing over a matter of months, up to 6 months, and they're finding it hard to get through their day. Why wait for that long to intervene with an orthotic versus why or why not use an orthotic earlier?
Natural history should tell us that they'll probably be getting better over that period of time.
So if it's an acute injury, if it's an acute injury, and it's not for some reason, you're trying to allow it to follow its natural history.
They might have had it for 2 years, and then and I want to see what the effect of changing shoes, habits, and rehab. Well, I want to see how those 3 things are going to affect it without putting the orthotic in place.
Yeah.
Putting the orthotic in place, it becomes a reliance upon the orthotic.
Yeah.
The orthotic is probably going to take some more pain away quicker, but I don't want to set that up as a go-to so quickly.
The issue that it impacts the other 3 as well.
You're
essentially changing the environment, but also the function.
It is, but it's more about what their state of mind might be around what helped.
Yeah, right.
And so if they've already got orthotic in place, then I'll be saying let's use that for the things that trigger pain more. But let's start trying to go without it, or let's reduce it a bit if that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and obviously
running their orthotics for the rest of their lives. Like it might be for 3 hours a week. It doesn't matter. It's not detrimental to their foot function unless they are having issues because of that orthotic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess obviously it would depend on the individual. You weren't referring to a specific individual there, but it's like if someone's in so much debilitating pain.
I have one in mind.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's a bit rare.
But I
It's not
imagine,
rare that I have to do it.
yeah,
I might have done it 2 to 3 times in
right.
5 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah. For plantar heel pain.
Yeah.
I've had to go back to an orthotic. Or
Yeah.
like put an orthotic in place that wasn't there in the first place.
Yeah.
Or I think we talked about one earlier today before we came on the podcast of someone that's so
Bunion.
mobile, and that both Michelle Bergeron and I have like gone to the nth degree with rehab, and we can't get that first ray, the inside of the foot, stabilized. So we're going to put like a really light orthotic in, a custom toe wedge, and use it in a minimalist shoe. You know, so it's kind of meeting halfway. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And I think TFC probably started out, and I started out being all or nothing because that's the nature of finding something new. You're like all in.
Yeah.
But then you start seeing people and dealing with people, and you realize the human is never
It's never
black
textbook.
it's never black and white.
Yeah.
It's always grey. That even the most, like I consider you an elite mover, and you've just explained how you woke up with knee pain, and it might be refreshing for everyone to hear that because it's, like he's human. You know, like even the most elite movers have like the bodies have bodies that still feel pain, and like this is normal stuff. And for you, you had to do maybe a considerably extreme exercise for that to happen, or something that your body was like really not prepared for. But the next person,
It was pretty silly.
yeah, the next person might just be going down to the local supermarket and taking longer at the shops and spending an extra half an hour on their feet.
Yeah.
That might trigger it. You know, like that would be the other end of the spectrum. All about capacity, and so it's never black and white. Yeah, meeting people where they're at. And being able to work out where that place is at, rather than going, oh, everyone should be able to do this. You know, why can't I do this? You know, like, yeah.
Yeah, so it's that. Yeah, so the vast majority of people can self-manage their pain without an orthotic. Therefore, it's kind of important to try that first.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, because even if it doesn't work, they understand that that is the important thing. The orthotic is just helping you do that. Versus if their experience is the orthotic helped the pain, well, why the fuck would I do an exercise? Like the orthotic is the thing. So it's
in that 6 months, they haven't been just left out there in the wild.
Yeah,
They've noticed that they're better at doing this exercise, that they're more functional here. They can do 30 single leg calf. They're ticking so many of the boxes in terms of being a more functional human.
Yeah.
And they know it. And so sometimes they might end up going to get a cortisone shot because there's some residual pain. So we need to break this pain cycle somehow. Like sometimes at that point, it doesn't really matter how you break it. It just needs to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, to let everything else give
To
you a
allow
window.
some
Yeah.
movement.
Yeah, or to allow the brain to go, okay, that's over. Let's move on. You know, oh, look, I can do all this now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and often we talk about, Tom and I do a lot of podcasts on different conditions and principles of rehab and stuff, and I think a lot of the time people are probably missing other aspects of their lifestyle and their health that are making their body and nervous system extra sensitive and more likely to feel pain in higher amounts, whether it's lack of sleep, inflammatory diets, gut issues, so on and so forth. It's just like a high level of systemic inflammation, so that it's a lot harder for the usual load management tricks to work, or load management, strategies, because their body is just at a higher level of sensitivity.
Yeah, and I reckon TFC do that better than like me as an individual health practitioner. When someone comes to me with foot pain, it is a hard thing to then start talking about their weight, what they're eating, their personal life in terms of stresses from their teenage kids or their relationship with their partner or how well they're sleeping. So I feel it's my job to make mention of it, but I don't delve too much into it.
Yeah.
But just bringing it to their attention, that it can be a factor, I think is...
You do only have so much time.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. So we've got to make sure... So I make sure that they understand that could be an issue. I flag it straight up. Or it could have... especially if we're struggling to say, oh, like I did this marathon when I'd only trained 2 months and that's why I've got a sore foot. Like that's obvious, that's why it got sore. And so you're right, guys.
That's right.
And so, so if it's really hard to find that big red flag as to why they got sore, then we're going to be delving into that a little bit more. Yeah, and especially if they're overweight, they know that's why their feet are sore a lot of the time.
But I think that awareness that you help them build and the education about what's going on with this does arm them with, even if they don't find us or they don't find another program or another community that's going to help them look at their holistic health, just by better understanding what's going on here, light bulbs start to go off about what's going on everywhere else.
100%, yeah.
And it just,
Yeah, so I saw a guy from country Victoria recently online, and he's like, oh, do you know any physios for shoulders? Because like I've never met a health practitioner like you, and I want to know a physio that is going to address it in the same. Like he's like, oh, why can't this work for my shoulder?
Yeah.
Why isn't someone dealing with me for my shoulder like this
the
instead
same
of
way.
Yeah, like it's
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's a big reason why we want to have this big array of podcasts, because I think people take in information in their own time when they're like ready and open to receiving that information, and sometimes you can't. If it can be overwhelming in a single session with a practitioner, but if you're just driving on your way to work and you're going to listen to the radio anyway, you can start absorbing these messages, and you don't really have to get it all at once. But if you recommended, the Principles of Rehab podcast of ours to a client, they'll hear stuff that reinforces what you're saying. They'll be like, oh, that clicked. The way he explained that clicked, and over time they just click more and more. And then it paints this full picture to the point that they really get what's going on without you having to spend all of that time with them, and it's completely free. So it's like saves people time, saves people money, it saves people energy.
Reinforces what I'm saying.
Reinforces what you're saying, and is also like a reminder. Like if you've said, hey, listen to this podcast on your way to work.
Yeah.
They listen to it, they're like, oh yeah, okay, cool. When I get to work, I'm going to do 5 minutes of those exercises because it's fresh in their mind. So I think there's a really a big power to that.
Place, yeah.
And at the same time, like...
Excuse the fart. We'll might just pause.
We've had all the chaos. But like at the same time, if someone is coming to see you for a foot issue, and okay, they resolve that foot issue, but a shoulder pain does come up down the line, that's the reason the TFC Pro Directory isn't just podiatrists.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason there's massage therapists, yoga instructors, Pilates instructors, people of all different facets, personal trainers, physios, obviously. The whole point is that because you understand what these practitioners value, you have faith that if something does go wrong, then there are people there that you can turn to. Or if you just want to better your movement capacity generally, there's someone there that you're going to get the same experience from. It gives them that it maintains that faith. No matter what goes wrong, there's probably someone out there that I can trust
shares
is
these
going
values.
to...
That's why...
Or they'll be in a network of people that are similar.
Yeah.
Like this guy asked me about the shoulder.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm like, okay, there's a guy in Brisbane, not sure if he's doing, but then there's this other person, you're just pulling that resources together. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the power of the network with a shared value structure, basically.
Yeah.
And that's why the tenets aren't the 10 tenets of TFC Pro aren't all focused on feet. It's like, I lead by example. I aim to embody my work and lead by example. Like there's these more broad principles of like what it means to be a TFC Pro. It doesn't have to just be focused on feet. Yeah.
That'd be a good place to wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
I'm getting hungry.
Me too.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, thanks for
to
coming
chat.
on. It's been a long time coming. I think the last one was maybe 3 years ago.
Okay.
It was,
Yeah.
I believe. 2 to 3,
Anytime.
but overdue. We'll make it, more regular.
Yeah.
Sweet.
We'll get you on a pro roundtable soon enough.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening, everyone, and putting up with the noises in the background.
The soccer balls. It's all worth it.
I hope we were
outside.
audible. Yeah. It's much better for us. Not necessarily better for you listening, but we enjoy it more. Just the main
Fix it
thing.
as much as we can. Until next time. Catches. Thanks for tuning in to the Restore to Explore podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, we'd really appreciate you leaving a review wherever you're listening. That's the best way to support us and to help us reach more people.
If you're after more free TFC education or training, looking for any of our TFC tools, natural footwear discounts, or you want specialised guidance on your foot health journey from a trusted TFC health professional, head to thefootcollective.com. All of the important links are in the show notes of the episode.